It's Wednesday, 16 November in the year of our Lord 2022. Okay, we got a lot to get to. We're going to get to Arizona at the bottom of the hour. Brian Kennedy's going to join me. We're going to look at more testimony today, eyewitness testimony at the Maricopa County supervisors, but there's thousands more coming in. People should know that Kari Lake is very engaged in this governor's race, and it is a long way from over, baby. So we'll make sure we get to all the details of that at the bottom of the hour. Be even more coming out tomorrow, maybe even some more tonight if the show goes to 7. I want to bring in a guy that is a friend of the show, and the audience has really taken to Ed Dowd. Ed's a former portfolio manager over at BlackRock. Really came to light because he got into the numbers of understanding insurance and risk management, and he really has become an expert in working with people in his team on mortality rates and the vaccine. We're going to get to that. He's got a big, huge new book out with Tony Lyons and the crew at Skyhorse. And Tony's going to join us also with Dr. Paul Alexander, because now that we've taken control of the House, I know this from people that are going to oversee some of the committees. There's going to be deep, huge investigations on all this. And so I want to get into it and make sure the audience, we're always ahead of the curve. But Ed, you also have done some great capital markets work and really been someone the audience has taken to as you've given kind of your overall assessment of where the economy is going. You've and I want to, if we can get the document right on the PDF. I'll spit that out in a second. The PDF up on the site in Memphis and get it out. It's you guys have done, or people you work with have done a report on the overall economy. And Ed, can you take a few minutes before we start talking about the mortality and the vaccine and your research there and your new book? I want you to give your assessment of where we are in mid-November of 2022 with the American economy and the global economy.
Sure. My team is two PhD physicists, Carlos Alegre and Yuri Nunes. We started a hedge fund, but Carlos had already come up with economic models to predict the economy. He has a hedge fund model that he's running that currently predicts all sorts of asset classes. And he put this report out in November, and basically it confirms what I said to you a couple of weeks ago, which is that we're going to see a deep, deep recession in Q1 and Q2 along the lines of 2000 to 2001, and also 1990. Now, it can get even worse with any kind of systemic problem. Any kind of accident or hiccup in the financial system will exacerbate that and make it even worse. So that's what we're looking at. The bottom line is these are economic models, early cycle indicators that predict the trajectory of the economy. And in November of 21, we have what we call our expansion index. It was 60%. It peaked in December 21 at 65 and started rolling over in January. That's when the stock market peaked. And right now it's at minus 90%, which indicates a very severe recession on the horizon. And this is bad news for the economy, bad news for people who have jobs who might get laid off. It's bad news for the banking system. It's bad news just all around.
I want to. Okay, so up until a couple weeks ago, the standard response, because we've been doing a lot of what we call under the hood analysis of the lived experience of people and how that manifests itself in numbers. And the rebuttal we would always get is that, well, the consumer's still strong and unemployment's still low. We said, yeah, but if you look just below that, the consumer is still strong because they're increasing debt, and now it's out there. It's $16.5 trillion of debt. And that was, a lot of it was taken out in lower interest rates. Now those interest rates start to explode. And so and inflation's so high, people are living off their credit cards, and now they're in a vicious cycle. Today, Amazon's set to lay off thousands, right? Amazon going to lay off thousands. And Jeff Bezos comes out and says, hey, I think it's a good time. People should not be buying like cars and houses or buying things. They should be hunkering down right now because we're about to hit a firestorm. In addition, I've got the Wall Street Journal talking to tech firms right here. The tech firms drop office space in swift nationwide retreat. Commercial real estate, particularly in the big cities that have become havens for kind of these mini Silicon Valleys, are now people are just walking away from the leases. Is that what's leading? Are those the early indicators you see? Because when Cortez and I go through this, it looks to us like we are very rapidly, not just deceleration, we're about to go off a cliff. In the first couple of quarters, there's a great article that was out today about Fed forecasting. And the Fed forecast still doesn't forecast a recession. They say one of the reasons the Fed doesn't do that is that it's so politicized. It's afraid to actually do the real modeling. It's got to be there because they make an assumption in the modeling that they will have monetary policy that will coordinate with fiscal policy to lessen everything. So at worst, everything's a soft landing. What's your assessment on the details of why do you think we're heading in, not just a recession? You think we could be heading to a major recession along the lines of the internet crash of early 2000 or the real estate? People forgot we had two bubbles. We had the internet bubble and the stock market that crashed in the first couple of months of 2000. We had the first quarter and led to a major recession for a couple of years. We had the real estate asset bubble from the savings loan, all that crashed in the early 90s. I think it cost Bush 41 the election. Are those along the lines that you and your partners see that we're looking at?
Yeah, so early cycle indicators started deteriorating at the beginning of the year, and they've only gotten way worse. And if you really want to understand what's going on, the Fed really doesn't understand the economy anymore. There's a lot of people I talk to on Wall Street at hedge funds that say that the Fed uses unemployment as a big part of forecasting, and unemployment doesn't drive the economy like it used to. We've become a financialized economy. So the stock market and the bond market is the economy. And as those go lower, it has knock-on effects and multiplier effects. And this is a disaster. So you're going to see what I call the great global margin call that's already begun earlier this year and just going to continue. And we don't make a lot of things here anymore. A lot of the wealth is paper wealth that's been bid up by Fed easy money. And, anecdotally, I see it here on Maui. There's a Google executive who I knew who bought a home, and now he's selling the home, and he didn't even occupy it within like 3 months because he didn't say why, but I suspect he's feeling a lot poorer with his stock options underwater, and he was doing everything with loans. So this is what happens. People feel poorer, and they're reining in their horns, and economic activity from the wealthy and the top 10%, which was kind of holding up the economy, is just disappearing overnight. People are not feeling good.
Your global margin calls, because interest rates are going up all over and they're exploding. I think England announced today they got inflation up again, 11.4%, highest, I think, inflation they've had since World War II. The global margin call is this $300 trillion of debt. We kind of are now, and I think 90 trillion since the CCP virus hit. Now that was all structured on essentially zero interest rates. The chickens are coming home to roost there because now interest rates pop up. That's the global margin call you're talking about?
Yeah, correct. And the dollar is a sign of that. The dollar has weakened a little bit recently, but I suspect the dollar will continue versus other indices to go up because a lot of this debt is dollar denominated. The bottom line is, Steve, since the early days of my career, I've watched low interest rate cycles turn into disasters as they raise interest rates. In the 90s, it was the S&L crisis, and then there was a mortgage bond crisis in the mid 90s, and then we had the dot-com crisis, and then we had the financial housing crisis. Every time the Fed lowers, there's excess, there's fraud, the leverage goes somewhere. Usually we don't know where, and someone's holding the old maid. And I suspect there's a lot of old maids out there that are going to come to fruition as this unwinds. And FTX is just one example. The UK pensioner problem was an example. There's going to be many, many more. I mean, this is the bubble to end all bubbles. So I suspect multiple months of discovery of massive frauds and unwinding and deleveraging of all sorts of institutions.
This is what happened in England when they had the gilt problem. They found out that that the pension funds, because in zero interest rates or low interest rates, couldn't get the return to meet their actuarial tables, were doing all types of things with derivatives and leverage that, hey, didn't know if a pension fund should be doing that to get the returns they needed to kind of meet the requirements they have for these actuarial tables. I think we're going to see a lot of that. There are already discussions of, for instance, a situation like the Bitcoin situation, the cryptocurrency situation, that may have many other ramifications because there could have been people there that had very leveraged bets based upon very arcane derivatives that are very tough for people to understand how they interconnect. So no, but just from your perspective, the first quarter of next year, because a lot of people are saying, hey, if it happens in the second quarter, third quarter, towards the end of the year, you guys are saying, hey, we don't like what the first quarter looks like. People should strap in.
Yeah, Q1 will be bad, and Q2 will be probably even worse. We're looking at minus 3% quarter over quarter in Q1 and Q2. Q2 could be the trough, but again, I can't predict the systemic issues that may be uncovered as the tide rolls out. That's the biggest problem. Steve, when you think about Wall Street has made a living off of low interest rate environments that go on too long, creating structured product, Byzantine product that only they understand, selling it to less sophisticated institutional investors. And when the tide rolls out, there's usually a blow up somewhere. And I think this has been we've had low interest rates for 12 years. I mean, I can't imagine all the bombs that are waiting to explode in people's portfolios across the globe. And I'm not talking individual investors. I'm talking supposedly, professional, institutional people who thought they knew what they were buying, but never would imagine interest rates would do this. And of course, they've done this. This is what happens every rate hike cycle.
Okay, you've spent an incredible amount of time because the vaccine got your attention, and particularly the mortality rates. Walk us through your new set of analysis, and you've got this major book coming out. Walk us through that.
All right, I'll break it down in two parts. My team at Finance Technologies and myself launched last week on another show, the Humanity Project. You can find it at financetechnologies.com, and that's PHI, not F. We use the symbol phi, which is the natural Fibonacci golden ratio. So that's just kind of a take on that. But the bottom line is we are becoming the watchdog of the watchdogs. We invite other people to help us. We've done this pro bono where we've basically analyzed all the excess mortality in the UK, all of Europe using Eurostat data, and the US is going to drop soon. I've already done a lot of work on the US, so we know the story there, but and we've done work on US disability, and we're going to do a project on the vaccine damage and how that's going to affect things. But this is basically a devastating analysis of what's going on. Here's an example. This is the country of Denmark. You can see on the left, that's total population for Denmark. That's the projected death rates and the experienced death rates. And you can see what happened when vaccines were introduced in Denmark. And then on the right is just the excess death since 2020. And it goes up every year with miracle vaccines. Gee, I wonder what's going on. And the next chart on Denmark is you can break it down by age cohort, and you can see the vaccine excess death by year, or not vaccine, but excess death by year. And it goes up in every age cohort into 2022. And so what did Denmark just do? Denmark just basically banned the vaccine for those under 50. They're kind of doing a little Homer Simpson fade into the hedgerow. And bottom line is they basically said to their population, it's better to get COVID than the vaccine. So the question we need to ask is, why are we doing this in the U.S.? I mean, what's going on in Denmark is going on basically depending upon certain specific country situations in vaccine uptake. It's going across the globe. Excess death, excess disability. It's an absolute disaster. We also, on this website, go into the U.S. disability data, and the next chart basically tells the story. And this is it in a nutshell. U.S. disability is up huge from May of 2021, about 3.5 million people. The rate of change, or the increase in disability rate for the general population was 11% as of September of 2022, and it's a civilian labor force, which is about 23.5%, and the employed, which is the actual people working, 98 to 100 million of us, that's 25.8%. So, a conclusion here is that it's been detrimental to your health to be employed in 2021 and 2022. obviously, my theory of the case, it's the vaccines and the mandates. And this is just hard data. This is the reality. This is going to have devastating impacts on the economy for years to come. I can then launch into the book unless you have questions. Do you have questions on
hang
this?
on, before I get to the book. Yeah, but here's what I don't understand. Denmark's, you're saying these nations are now telling you, hey, it's better to get COVID than the vax. How did we get in a situation in Western Europe? I think was worse than the United States. I think we took up. How did we get into a situation where every institution of public health, all the top universities, the top doctors, governments, from Boris Johnson all the way across all of Europe, how did they get into a situation they were demanding? They were making it a conditioned precedent of anything you could do in human life, including be employed, kids to go to school, to get the vax. How can you, because what you're saying, I think what makes people's heads blow up, and it's even still hard for me to grasp it. This is not a small miss. You're a Wall Street guy. You know, small miss on the margin of 5% or 10% or something like that can drive earnings. You know, miss a quarter, a stock could tank. These are multiple order of magnitude misses. I mean, this is not even close. How did that happen?
That's a great question. I have a theory of the case that would take a while to talk about, but it's basically there was a institutional momentum to get vaccine passports, is my theory of the case, that it was a system of control to help manage the global sovereign debt meltdown and control populations. Now, whether the vaccine was intentionally screwed up or it's a mistake, you know, that's not for me to determine, but they screwed it up and it's devastating. And this is the biggest crime I've ever seen in the history of my career. And it's the greatest asymmetric information gap I've ever seen, meaning, you know, we on the War Room know it, you know it, Steve, lots of people know it, some of the lawmakers I talk to know it, but 90% of the globe has no idea what just happened to them. And it's, you know, we're still seeing, as of August of this year, 36% excess mortality. I've seen the Society of Actuary numbers. They don't publish them as regularly as they only publish them annually. So we got 21 in August. 2022, August, the month of August, 36% excess mortality rate for millennials. It's still going on, Steve. This is, it boggles my mind. And the lack of noise on this is just the crickets we're hearing from our health institutions and politicians and the drug makers. It's just, it's to the point now where they know what we know. I'm calling it a cover up. I'm calling it criminal negligence at this point. It's a disaster.
Talk to me about the book, because part of taking, I know something's up in that the Democrats in spending $1 billion never did one spot about, weren't we the guys that brought you the vaccine? They were total crickets. You know that something's up, but I don't know if I see the intestinal fortitude institutionally of the Republicans to take this on the new Congress. There is to investigate Fauci and Wuhan, and I think we're going to get into this, but it's going to take a drive. That's why we're going to have Tony Lyons on from Skyhorse, and the co-author with Dr. Alexander Kent Heckenlively on in a second to talk about their book. But walk me through your book. When's it going to come out? What's the status? And how are you using this to kind of drive the message that you want the political class to understand?
So the book comes out in hard copy December 13th, I'm told. It's already available on ebook. Came out this Sunday. Essentially, this is the theory of the case as written by a Wall Street guy. I start off with the sudden athlete deaths. There's a study there, the Lyon study, that talks about over 38 years, only 29 athletes die suddenly on the field every year globally. Well, we're lucky if we get a month that's 29 since 2021. There are months with 90, 50, 60, 70. So this is real. It's happening. So the phenomenon is real, and there's a study out there on that. And then I posit the case that the vaccines are doing this, and I start dropping in all the data I've done on your show, the Society of Actuaries, the U.S. disability data, the data from Denmark and the U.K. We show that from 0 to 14 in the U.K., their excess death rates were going down during COVID and much of 21 until the vaccines were introduced, and they started rising again. So you see the general population's excess mortality going up with vaccines, except for 0 to 14 until it's introduced. So there's just evidence upon evidence. I blame the vaccine. But what I don't do in the book is I don't go into the who and why. All I say is at the end of it, basically, it's a cover up at this point. It's a crime. It's negligence. They see what we see. And this is one of the greatest frauds we've ever seen. And we got report after report that walks through different ways of looking at this. It's the theory of the case laid out in a very quick format. It's a 210-page book that takes about 3 hours to read. There's a lot of data and a lot of stories in there about sudden athletic deaths that you can verify yourself. And, the goal of the book is to convince the marginal mind. Obviously, a lot of people know what I know, this senior show, and they know it. But the idea is this book needs to get in the hands of someone who is on the fence, someone who doesn't know what's going on, because I come at it from a financial Wall Street stock picking point of view. I say that I made money between the two worlds of perception and reality. Perception being wrong, and that's how I make money because I know the reality. And on this, unfortunately, the perception is that these things are fine, but they're not, and it's detrimental to your health if you continue to take these things and continue to get boosters. So I'm trying to make the case that this is the greatest asymmetric information gap of my financial career. And I also want to say that knowing how the system's going to work and how this probably won't get out there as fast as I would like it, capital is going to be raised to take advantage of this tragedy, because the reality is the global economies have changed. My team and I are going to have economic models and forecasting tools better than everybody else because the rest of Wall Street is asleep at the switch, and capital is interested in this.
Ed, I will tell you, I know there's going to be a lot of strong interest on Capitol Hill, on at least the staffs getting all over these books prior to investigations and hearings. Cause Unknown, Ed Dowd, brilliant job as always. Once again, where do people get it? Where do they get you? What's your social media?
Social media, Getter, at Edward Dowd. Long ago kicked off Twitter, proud of that actually. My personal website is theyliedpeopledied.com. You can order the book there. You can also get a lot of the information I did in the U.S. Finance Technologies, PHI, nancetechnologies.com is where the Humanity Project is. And the U.S. data is going to be dropped in there pretty soon. And I also want to add before I go that this data that we put together it's peer reviewable data. My two PhD physicists, Carlos and Yuri, came up with a methodology paper on how to calculate the base rate. So we invite anybody to come attack us because I think they're going to be shocked when they see the amount of work that went into this.
Ed Dowd, Cause Unknown, will be one of the big firing off points for the new investigations that will take place during the first quarter. A quarter that will be going through economic turmoil, according to Ed Dowd and his partners. Ed, thank you very much. From
Thank
Hawaii. You. Ed Dowd, Cause Unknown. You got to get that one and study it. Okay, I want to bring in Tony Lyons, then we're going to get to Kent Henkel, because President Trump kicked off his what he would call the three-peat last night, and I think that if his followers and even some of the naysayers read the book Presidential Takedown, Tony, they would be even more fired up for this presidential run. Walk me through. I want you to talk about the types of books you're putting out, because more than ever, I think Skyhorse is going to be in the middle of what I would say a kind of a political and cultural firestorm next year, because a lot of this is just going to come to light, right? You got to get down to where these problems are with the economy, problems in public health. There's all kind of talks about, Biden just extended the COVID emergency powers again. You've put out a series of books that really are kind of shocking in their detail of how they are counter-narrative to what's being spoon-fed by the mainstream media. Talk to us about Skyhorse and what you're publishing.
Sure. I mean, there's so many books that we've been publishing that tell a story, that have information in them that you simply can't get anywhere else. And the censorship of books and the deplatforming and canceling of, the highest level doctors and scientists and, statisticians like Ed Dowd, that's a way that the government is working with the pharmaceutical companies to try to control everything that you do, what you think, what you read. And, so what these books are, if you start with Presidential Takedown by Dr. Paul Alexander, you can see that he was on the front lines. He was at the highest levels of government, sitting at the table with, the heads of pharmaceutical companies, of Pfizer and Moderna, and he says they were calling the shots, that they were working with Dr. Fauci to maximize their profits, and that they did not care about public health, that they did not listen to him, they didn't listen to other scientists, and they did everything to shut him down, to get rid of him. And when they saw that they could not bribe him, they could not change him, they just wanted to shut him down and cancel him and get everybody like him off the public stage, to manufacture a consensus so they could say that the medical consensus was whatever was beneficial to big pharmaceutical companies. So, you go from that book to a book like Dr. Robert
I tell you
Malone.
what, Tony, hang on for one second. Hang on 1 second. We're going to take a short commercial break. These books are shocking in their content, shocking in their message, and they've become amazingly relevant starting on January 3rd of this year. Short commercial break. Back in a moment.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. Tony Lyons, First off, Tony, and we are slammed for time, but I got to ask you this. Did you ever think that you would come in a stage of your life as a book publisher? Because I've read your stuff for years. It's been fantastic. That you would actually have a set of books that are quite frankly going to be at the forefront of driving a massive kind of tectonic plate shift in politics in this country?
I never thought that I would. And I saw steadily over the last 2.5 years the incredible censorship and the incredible sort of desire of the government to use these incredible tools that they have to partner with big tech to shut down anybody who disagrees with them. And, these are tools that would be the envy of any dictator in history. And it's scary. And I want to be at the forefront of grabbing back our freedom of speech and our personal rights in this country.
So let's walk through the set of 4 that you have coming out. And by the way, Tony's already the publisher of the seminal work, which was the Real Anthony Fauci by Bobby Kennedy, sold over 1.5 million copies. In an era when books that sell 50,000 are blockbusters, sold 1.5 million. I think 500,000 just to the War Room posse. Walk me through the new 4.
Okay, so Presidential Takedown by Dr. Paul Alexander shows that President Trump was a threat to big pharma profits. So they teamed up with Dr. Fauci, the NIH, the CDC, and they worked together to destroy President Trump and to destroy the possibility that alternative treatments, that early treatments like ivermectin, like any of the alternatives to a vaccine, were destroyed with all the people who were questioning this big pharma narrative. So they all worked together at the expense of human health to help maximize profits. Then you have somebody like Dr. Joe Ladapo. So Dr. Joe Ladapo does a study saying that, so he writes a book for us. It's called Transcend Fear. It's a phenomenal book. And he does a study.
By the way, he's Ron DeSantis's Surgeon General in the free state of Florida. Has done an amazing job. Continue on.
And so, Dr. Joe Ladapo went to Harvard. He is an incredibly intelligent, but non-conflicted. So this is a guy, all 4 of these people are people who refused to be bribed by the system, who refused to toe the line, and they did it at their own expense. So these are people that you should trust. So Dr. Joe Ladapo, Transcend Fear, he comes out with a study showing that 18 to 39-year-old healthy men should not take a booster shot because they're more likely to die of a heart attack or have, serious health problems from the vaccine than they are from COVID. So he gets canceled, hit pieces, everybody comes out against him, but he's telling the truth, and he's telling the truth based on real science. So then you've got Dr. Robert Malone. So he's an internationally recognized virologist, and, clinical research scientist who's worked at the highest levels of government on major projects, written more than 100 peer-reviewed studies. And he is taken down once again. Oh, and he is the inventor of the mRNA delivery and vaccination technology. So he is taken down because he says that the Dr. Fauci playbook, that the pharmaceutical company playbook is going to cost people their lives, is dangerous and is wrong and is anti-science. So he's destroyed, and he writes this book that's coming out in about 3 weeks, an incredible book called Lies My Government Told Me. And I think that, Dr. Robert Malone ought to be the head of the NIH. These people should be running the government. These people care about public health. They are not bribable. They're not doing it for corporate profits. So then you have Ed Dowd's book. He was great. You can see how incredibly proficient he is with the numbers. He writes a book called Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021 and 2022. And he's telling you that when we started vaccinating people on a population level, forcing everybody through mandates to get vaccinated so that they could not work, they could not do anything without getting vaccinated, and then all-cause mortality started going up. So in 2021, the numbers go up. They're supposed to go down. So he is the nail in the coffin of the sort of Fauci revolution, where we sacrifice American lives and American health for the sole purpose of maximizing pharmaceutical return on investment. So that's what these books do. These are incredible people willing to risk everything to tell the truth. And I really highly recommend that people read these 4 books.
Okay, I want to bring in Kent, really kind of the railhead of it is the presidential takedown. You're the co-author with Dr. Alexander. People understand Dr. Alexander was kind of brought in because he's a specialist in this area, kind of to augment the team, right? And his first person account is a horror story because he sat in, and the way you guys write it is almost like it has novelistic techniques because he was there. Walk us through the book and how you guys structured it.
Yeah, it really is a you are there book. So what Dr. Alexander was brought in as a senior pandemic advisor. So he was really Michael Caputo's number 1 man. What Michael Caputo told him, Michael Caputo is number 2 at Health and Human Services under Alex Azar. And Caputo told Alexander, I want you in every single meeting I'm in because I need you to tell me whether these people are telling me the truth. And so, all of us had the experience of sitting and watching all those presentations by the COVID-19 task force. This book pulls you through the television screen so you are a fly on the wall. Now, Steve, you asked a wonderful question in your previous segment, which is, how did we get to this point where the institutions seem so corrupted? Well, there's a quick answer, which is that the NIH has become the number 1 research funder in the world. So every year, the NIH gives out $30 billion in grants, okay? So that's money that's controlled by Francis Collins, the former Francis Collins, and Tony Fauci. So, Tony Fauci is a 50-year government employee. His salary is higher than that of the President of the United States. So every year, Fauci and Collins were giving out $30 billion a year. And the way that it's been changed in science is that we've got these generals, okay? Think of Fauci and Collins as the undisputed generals. They're the field marshals, okay? Now, for comparison, in 2020, both political parties spent $5 billion to elect a president. So Fauci and Collins had so much control over science that it's wrong to say it rivals that of the president because it's so much more powerful than that of the president. So that's how we got to this place where the institutions are so corrupted.
It's actually and this is, I don't want to give away a lot of the book. Dr. Alexander's been on here, is beloved by this audience, but if you read, and I'll let her go this, I got to jump to another topic, Maricopa County, but Tony, you're no wild-eyed right-winger. I mean, in the old days, this used to be the New York Times would do this, the Washington Post would do this, Scribner's and Simon & Schuster would publish these books, but you become founded. If you take Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci, and then you add these four, so I would say is a 5-set, you're absolutely in shock. But you understand that something, the administrative state has merged with these oligarchs, and particularly in Big Pharma, to create a kind of almost like a biomedical public health security state. You can't come away with anything at it. And then you read Paul Alexander's, who's a first-person account of actually being in there at the time. And the book's written as kind of a sequence of actions and meetings and things that are happening. So you're following it along and then you look back about what you were being told and what the mainstream media was telling you, what MSNBC and the New York Times. It's a scandal. You can't, the scale of this is bigger than Teapot Dome or Credit Mobilier or any of the big financial scandals in American history that come down from hundreds of years later. This is dwarfs all of that. And this is, go ahead, sir.
We're going to be talking about this for the next 100 years. That's how big this is. And what's really dramatic is that Paul Alexander tells how on the second day, he was told to go to a restaurant on the National Mall and wait for some people to join him. He was joined by one Republican, one Democratic United States Senator, and one Democratic Congressperson. And they told him that there was a bipartisan group in Washington, D.C., who believed the CDC had become too political, and they wanted Paul's help to take it down to the studs. So behind the scenes, so many people know the story. I think that's why everybody needs to get presidential takedown, because behind the scenes, this is what they're talking about. Okay. They know this story, but the public needs to know it.
Well, plus Latipo is a Harvard medical, he's got a medical degree from Harvard and a PhD in statistics. Malone was the inventor, and Dowd's a hedge fund guy. These are not like people blowing in from Iowa or New Mexico, which we love, the deplorables. These are inside. You can't get more insider than this. Alexander's a guy that's brought in to help manage the process. He's in there to manage the process. These are insider accounts. These aren't guys sitting there, going to Tea Party rallies. This is people that now it's the Tea Party and the Trump movement that's all fired up about it. But these guys are insiders telling you about it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Paul Alexander, when he's 17, 18 years old, his greatest ambition in life is to be Tom Cruise in Top Gun and help defend the United States, to be the best of the best. And so here he comes along. He has this amazing career. He goes to, Oxford and, is one of the world's leading experts in evidence-based medicine, gets brought in during this once in a century global pandemic. And, this is the time that you think everybody should be pulling together. And what he hears time and time again from the heads of these departments is they would tell him, because he was a foreigner and he didn't seem like he was really a Trump guy. They couldn't understand the way he looked, the way he talked. He couldn't be a Trump guy. And they would tell him, our job every day is to make Trump look bad on the evening news. And when you think that it's in the middle of a global pandemic, to call it a crime against humanity almost, is not properly describing it.
Guys, Tony, where do people go to see all the books and to order them?
Yeah, so they can go to skyhorsepublishing.com, or they can buy it and, get the books really quickly from amazon.com. And, these are such important books because these are people who, like I said before, stood up against the most powerful machine in history to tell the truth and to bring stories that were censored using the most incredible and the most scary sort of mechanisms that have ever been used to fool people at the expense of their health to maximize profits.
And to find me,
and they're all regulars.
You can find me.
What's your site?
You can find me at KentHeckenlivelyBooks.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Presidential Takedown.
Kent, you've written a thriller here. It's amazing. You can't put it down. So congratulations. I know Dr. Alexander is very lucky, and Tony's lucky to have you as a co-author. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks guys. You know, I want to bring in Brian Kennedy. Brian, I think what we're going to do is, and for the folks, I've got a lot of Maricopa County stuff. I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. I want to give people a heads up, and here's why. I want to bring in, so maybe we finish with one of the Maricopa County clips of the people testifying, but Brian, I got to have you because you're one of my mentors. I mean, how are we going to survive the institutional? You hear this, you hear these authors, and they're coming forward, and they're talking about the CDC, and they're talking about big farmers, and not the regulatory capture, but merger with the administrative state. How is the average American, the person watching this show, how are they supposed to deal with this and comprehend this, and to think that there's a plan of action that can actually set things right in this? That we have a crisis in this country, and one of the crises is an institutional crisis of governance.
No, I think that's right, Steve, and great to be with you. Look, right now the American people are deeply confused about what's going on here. They're engaged in, they had an election last week. It didn't go the way many of them wanted it to. They know they're in a political and information war right now, whether it's the Chinese Communist Party or George Soros or the radical left. They know they have to fight that war. Right now they don't see many champions. They have one in you, Steve Bannon, who they turn to every day for answers about all this. But when they look at that election last week in Maricopa County and around the country, do people really think that John Fetterman won that election? Most people will think that's absolutely impossible. Republicans, when people think 70% of the economy is going in the wrong direction, that Republicans barely win the House and don't pick up the Senate. There's something wrong and confusing about all this. They don't see leadership. They don't understand what's really going on. Where was the RNC in all this? MAGA needs an explanation right now. Where were all these people who were going to be so-called watching so that you couldn't steal the election? Where were all these lawyers that were supposed to be on the ground making sure that the election wasn't stolen? They're nowhere to be found. No one's being held accountable. I won't say the war was lost, because it wasn't, but a battle was lost, an important battle, and no one's being held to account. They need to hear that right now from people. They get it from you. They get explanations from you and your team, and that's very important. But they need national leadership about this. President Trump announced last night.
Hang on 1 second. I think this is what Carrie Lake and her team were working to come up with. But even there, it's going to cause questions about the 2 years of preparation to get on top of this. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe right now, with what I've seen, you can actually certify the election in Arizona. And this thing's on a knife's edge, right? It's 17,000 votes, and it may even get closer tonight. And Abe Hamadeh could be within 100 votes or in a dead heat. And it's going to be shocking. And I tell you, the example in Nevada is even worse. Nevada is in the ballot manufacturing business. And how does the RNC and how did even the campaigns or the organized state GOP not at least understand the mechanism of how they were going to game the system? That has to be explained to people. Or, Brian, and this gets back to the vaccine situation, the CD situation, you're going to start having big swaths of people in this country just punch out of the system. They're just going to go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to live my life. I love my country, but I can't do this. I can't stand up to this. You're going to lose 10% of the voters in the Republican Party unless there are answers and people can see methodologies that are going to thwart that. And I'm telling people now that if you don't get on this now, and that's why the Arizona situation is so big, and quite frankly, I can't understand why other people are conceding these races and not trying to demand and get real accountings, or at least bring it up publicly somewhere where you can adjudicate it. I think it's just too much traditional. And this is what I think You get questions of leadership in the Congress and the RNC across the board, because people are just going to sit there and go, you just can't do this over and over again. Brian Kennedy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, that Steve. When you suffer a setback like this, people need to analyze what went wrong. Did people really vote for Katie Hobbs in Maricopa County because they believed in her message, a message which she never offered to the public? Did they not like Kari Lake? Is that why Katie Hobbs won? By the way, if that's why Katie Hobbs won, everybody here on the War Room in America, we're mature adults. We can accept that. Maybe we didn't make the right arguments to the American people, in which case we need to make better, harder, stronger arguments next time. If that's the case, fine, let us go down that path. But a lot of Americans think these elections simply were not fair. When they take a week to count the votes, when it looks like there's voter suppression with these machines malfunctioning, they think the system is rigged against them. And so Kari Lake, Mark Fincham, Abe Hamadeh, they presented an existential threat to this system. They were going to expose everything that was going wrong. And it looks, after a week of voting and all the malfeasance, that they're simply not going to let them win. If it was a fair election, prove it to the American people.
Looks like
prove it to the people of Arizona.
Okay. Anyway, we're about to the end of it anyway. Brian Kennedy's going to join us back tomorrow morning. What we're going to do is that tomorrow morning, starting at 10 o'clock, we're going to be talking Arizona. We're going to be talking President Trump and the campaign. We're going to try capital markets. We're going to be trying all of it. So make sure you join us tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We're going to get back into the war room. I may be up on Getter later in the evening, so check us out there. Stephen K. Bannon, you've been in War Room Battleground. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.